Still the risk of some wintry showers for Scotland and quite a keen wind here, so feeling very cold, highs struggling around 2 to 4 degrees here for the afternoon. Further south, around where we should be for the time of year, but certainly feeling a bit colder than what we have been used to. And then into the evening, we start to see bands of rain and showers moving in from the west. As it bumps into the colder air, we could see some sleet and snow, especially across parts of Wales and the Midlands. And then later on in the night, we're just keeping a very close eye on this band of rain. It may just move into parts of southeast England, even giving some sleet and snow to the high ground here by the end of the night. A cold night for all, especially for Scotland. Could even see lows down to -8 or -10 in a few spots. And then Monday itself, once we lose this rain, really it's a day of sunny spells and a few wintry showers. And that theme then continues into Tuesday and Wednesday. Widespread frost by night and the further risk of some snow at times.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you.
GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Camilla Tominey. Join me on GB News on Sunday mornings for a politics show with personality. On TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Hello again, friends. Welcome to Neil Oliver Live on GB News TV and on radio. Tonight, I'll give my views on this week's news that there's been a big increase in excess deaths. We'll discuss the government's decision not to make spiking someone's drink a specific criminal offence. And I'll talk about the seal that, according to one expert, is treating an Essex reservoir like a branch of Waitrose. All of that and more coming up before 8 o'clock. But first, an update on the latest news from Bethany Elsey.
Neil, thank you. Good evening. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB Newsroom. The Metropolitan Police say 4 people, including a 7-year-old girl, have been injured in a shooting outside a funeral in northwest London. Initial inquiries suggest the shots were fired from a moving vehicle on Phoenix Road. 3 women aged 41, 48 and 54 were taken to hospital. Their injuries are not thought to be life-threatening, but the 41-year-old has suffered life-changing injuries. A 7-year-old girl has been taken to hospital with injuries believed to have been sustained in the same incident. Her condition is currently unknown. Police say no arrests have yet been made. The UK has sanctioned Iran's Prosecutor General following the execution of a British-Iranian national in Iran. Ali Reza Akbari was sentenced to death on charges of spying for Britain. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak described the killing as callous and cowardly. Meanwhile, Iran's state media is reporting the British ambassador has been summoned to Iran's foreign ministry, which is accusing Britain of meddling in their national security. The Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, says the government is treating Iran's actions very seriously.
When I found out earlier this morning from the officials in Tehran that this had taken place, of course I was filled with a revulsion that I think any reasonable person would have. That is why we have taken this decisive action. That is why we've made it clear that our response will not necessarily be limited to the measures that we have announced today. We take this incredibly seriously.
US President Joe Biden's legal team say they've found an additional 5 pages of documents marked as classified at his home in Delaware. Earlier this week, his team admitted they found other classified documents at his home and in his garage from his time as vice president during the Obama administration. The US Attorney General has appointed a special counsel to investigate the matter. At least 5 people have been killed after Russian missiles struck an apartment building in central Ukraine. Dnipro's regional governor says at least 27 people, including 6 children, were injured in the attack. Rescue efforts are ongoing, with more people still trapped under the rubble. Moscow also attacked vital energy facilities across Ukraine today. Earlier, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak pledged to supply Challenger 2 battle tanks to help Ukraine and for the country to retake territory lost to Russia. In other news, a union representing ambulance workers has written to the Prime Minister saying they feel betrayed by attempts to paint them as uncaring. The GMB, which represents more than 10,000 ambulance staff, told Rishi Sunak he was demonising them over strike action. It comes after Mr Sunak told the Commons that industrial action was terrifying the public. While Tory MP Lee Anderson told GB News the letter may not reflect the views of all workers.
There's a distinction here, Phil, and you know this, between ambulance drivers and ambulance unions. You know, I've spent times a shift with ambulance drivers, and they, you know, sometimes they tell me a different story to what the unions are telling them. It's about time we started listening to the ambulance drivers and the paramedics rather than the unions, who we know has got one single agenda, and that's to get rid of us.
Nursing strikes have been paused in Scotland after talks between the First Minister Nicola Sturgeon and the Royal College of Nursing. Negotiations will now continue next week with the aim of reaching a deal by the end of February. The Scottish Government is also pledging to match any NHS pay increase in England if it's higher. RCN General Secretary Pat Cullen credits pressure from nurses as being key to negotiations. Plans to house 400 asylum seekers in a small village near Northampton have now been dropped by the Home Office. Residents had objected to using the 17th century Highgate House Hotel in Cretan, which has a population of just over 500. James Hill is the chairman of Cretan Parish Council. He told us why residents were against the scheme.
We're a village of 520 people, and the prospect of 400 people coming to live here without occupation or activities to keep them occupied, without proper access to local services, we felt that was unsustainable for us as a community and also for the local area.
Romanian authorities have seized luxury cars from Andrew Tate's property as part of a criminal inquiry into alleged human trafficking. The social media influencer and his brother, as well as 2 Romanian women, were detained on charges of forming a criminal gang to sexually exploit 6 women. Earlier this week, the 4 suspects lost a legal challenge against their 30-day arrest. They have all denied any wrongdoing. The government says single-use plastic plates and cutlery will be banned in England from October in a bid to curb the impact of plastic on the environment. England currently uses around 2.7 billion pieces of single-use cutlery every year, but only 10% is recycled. Repeated breaches of the new legislation could lead to retailers facing criminal charges. Dr. Christian Dunn, a senior lecturer at Bangor University, told us why it's necessary.
Plastic doesn't break down, doesn't decompose, doesn't rot away. And what happens to it is it breaks up into smaller and smaller pieces of plastics, which then become microplastics or even nanoplastics. And now what we're seeing is those plastics are so small and they're being found everywhere. They're in the rain, they're in the air that we're breathing in, they're even in our blood.
You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now let's get back to Neil.
Faster and faster our leaders are running now, running from the truth. Excess deaths are rising all around us like floodwater. In recent weeks, more people have died than during the height of the pandemic. They have not died of COVID-19, we know that much. So, what is happening? Why are thousands more people dying than usual? And why no daily televised announcements of those deaths, as we had with those attributed to COVID? I can guess. Ask the question, however, talk about these deaths, demand answers, and watch the chickens run faster still, while lashing out with all the censorship, cancellation, downright demonising of dissent, and more recently, the most egregious insults they can muster. All their palpable panic and self-preserving outrage makes plain how much blood is already in the water. Health Secretary Steve Barclay, the latest handed the poisoned chalice, was on another news channel this week. He was asked about 50,000 excess deaths in the last year, invited to explain them. Delays in seeing GPs, he said, delays in treatment caused by lockdown. He was quick to point out that other countries were seeing similar levels of deaths that were nothing to do with the virus, as though that somehow made 50,000 people dying here less of a problem. If you think it's bad here, look over there. That's not an answer worth having. That's not an answer at all. The fact these deaths are happening worldwide means the attempt to blame them here on a failing NHS or striking ambulance drivers is for the birds. It's just another bid to distract people's attention from the elephant in the room. Asked how alarming he found the figures of death, Barclay said only that they were concerning. He evidently didn't like the journalist's choice of word alarming because he wouldn't use it. That journalist pointedly didn't ask him about the role of the medical products in all this, and Barclay certainly didn't mention it. Why is this? Why, when physicians and scientists here and all around the world are able to quote peer-reviewed research pointing to injuries and deaths associated with those products, why does our Health Secretary, together with almost the entirety of MPs and the government's preferred medics, scientists and hacks, fail even to contemplate that glassy-eyed elephant? Is it to do with the billions of pounds already invested in the still experimental technology of mRNA vaccines? Who knows? In the US, insurance companies have reported an overwhelming and inexplicable increase in all-cause deaths among 18 to 49-year-olds. And yet all the usual suspects are still out there banging the drum for the jabs. They are safe and effective, we are still told, even for 6-month-old babies. Why are they still saying safe when people are dying in the aftermath of receiving them, and we don't know why, far less whether or not it's those medical products to blame? Why are they still saying effective when we know the latest strain of COVID freely circulating now is expected to bypass the jabs anyway? On social media, MP Andrew Bridgen quoted an Israeli Jewish doctor of criminology saying the vaccine rollout was the biggest crime against humanity since the Holocaust. In the aftermath, Bridgen was accused of making an anti-Semitic remark by Matt Hancock and others. Many Jewish people here and around the world have since responded saying his social media post was not anti-Semitic and offering him their support. Today, The Times said Bridgen had been, and I quote, groomed by gangs of anti-vaxxers, appearing to repurpose headline language in an attempt to have readers see those with questions to ask about the safety of medical products in the same light as those who gang rape children. While joining the chorus of condemnation and withdrawing the Tory whip from Bridgen, Tory Chief Whip Simon Hart said, quote, misinformation about the vaccines causes harms and costs lives, end quote. But I ask, Exactly which information freely circulating now is actually the misinformation? Is it asking questions about those medical products, as Bridgen has done, or is it continuing to describe as safe and effective injections that may cause harm? Is it insisting that people, babies included, should receive these injections while questions remain unanswered regarding the as yet unexplained deaths of tens of thousands of people in this country during the years when those products were rolled out to billions of people? There are all sorts of glaring, unexplained holes in the official narrative now. If the narrative was cheese, it would be Swiss. For example, no one in authority ever mentions the fact that AstraZeneca offering was quietly dropped from use months ago, here and around the world. If those medical products are only safe and effective and saving millions of lives, why is the AstraZeneca jab gone? Last month, in the state of Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis called for a grand jury to investigate any and all wrongdoing with respect to the products marketed as COVID vaccines. Why are our leaders here still only describing those same products as safe and effective, still claiming they're saving millions of lives, when one of the same products is off the shelves, and while those behind the production and delivery of the rest are set to be investigated by some of the highest authorities? Why is that? Every day, people of all ages and from all walks of life are dropping dead or being found dead in their homes by loved ones who had no reason to expect anything was amiss with that person's health. Defibrillators are installed in schools now. There was no such thing required in my school days. And all the while, press releases go out saying children die of heart attacks too. And yet anyone having the temerity to ask if any heart attack deaths followed injections with those medical products is furiously shouted down. Just months ago, it was absolutely the thing to ask whether someone was jabbed before allowing them into a fast food outlet or a cinema or a theatre or a workplace. But hear about a fit teenager face planting on a football pitch in the middle of a game, and suddenly such an inquiry is a gross intrusion. When did asking pertinent questions in the aftermath of an otherwise healthy young person dropping dead become a social taboo? Any criticism of those products' safety, even just asking questions, attracts harder and harder condemnation, even as the evidence mounts that harms are most certainly being inflicted by them. After all these months, as the elephant in the room has grown ever larger, ever more unavoidably obvious, so the efforts to silence, cancel, censor and plain frighten off the unconvinced have grown more and more strident. On Sunday night, I spent nearly 5 hours online talking to doctors and scientists from all around the world, all of them telling their stories of cancellation, censorship, damage to reputation. 2 of the doctors had been jailed for successfully treating their patients with repurposed drugs like ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. Highly trained, highly qualified, esteemed physicians locked in jail cells for treating their patients as they saw fit and saving lives in the process. Around 16,000 people listened to those conversations live on air. Goodness knows how many more have listened to the recording since then. There's a gnawing hunger out there, a desperation felt by millions of people to expose the stories of harm done, to listen to experienced health professionals talking about how, in their highly qualified opinion, uncountable lives might have been saved by alternative early treatments before people's lips turned blue and they died on ventilators, to ask honest questions and hear answers in the face of unprecedented excess deaths. And yet harder than ever, the politicians and their enablers play whack-a-mole, angrily smacking down as many contrary voices as possible. Attention seekers who just months ago couldn't wait to post pictures of their own jabs or to stand in front of a camera and urge others to do likewise for the greater good have mysteriously found other things to preach about, like the climate, or to wring their hands about the plight of the poor in a time of lockdown crisis, a crisis that they were neck deep in causing in the first place by approving ruinous strategies and policies. Instead of the mainstream media asking questions about those medical products, what do we get? A veritable flood of stories in the past year seeking to offer any number of explanations for sudden death by sudden heart attack and stroke in otherwise healthy people. In November last year, The Sun said, "Green fingers, urgent warning to gardeners as soil increases risk of a killer heart disease." In September, The Times informed us that can of diet drink a day linked to 23% greater risk of stroke. In August, ABC News ran with rise in heart disease may be explained by extreme weather conditions. In April, the Daily Sabah in Turkey had "Good news can cause heart attacks too." In September, the Indian Express said, "Explained a heart attack while exercising, why it happens and who's at risk." In May, Very Well Health offered the possibility of a heart attack from shovelling snow. And last February, Wales Online let its readers know that energy bill prices may cause heart attacks and strokes, says TVGP. Why are we invited to look in so many directions for explanations of sudden deaths by heart attack and stroke, and yet the same mainstream media so blatantly ignores credible scientific data in peer-reviewed journals that reveals what might be a crucial line of inquiry for anyone with a serious mind? On the 31st of August last year, the journal Vaccine published a piece stating that the risk of serious harm after a jab of the mRNA products was 1 in 800. In short, the paper said you were more likely to suffer an adverse event from the jab than to be hospitalised with COVID. And yet, despite such a properly worrying finding, the silence from the mainstream media has been deafening. Where are the journalists to ask questions, far less to offer strident opinion pieces calling for heads to roll? Dr. Asim Malhotra, a regular guest on GB News, has had a paper peer-reviewed and published in the Journal of Insulin Resistance in which he said his father died after 2 injections of the Pfizer COVID-19 product. Dr. Malhotra did not outright blame the jabs. He was persuaded by his own research, however, that his dad's jabs had been a likely contributory factor in his death. In any event, that he did indeed have grounds for asking questions about those products was deemed factual by that peer-reviewed publication. More recently, Dr. Malhotra has joined with others, scientists and doctors from all around the world, in calling for the suspension of the jabs. How is that call received by the mass of the media and by almost all politicians? He is demonised, ridiculed once again, most recently in the ugliest manner imaginable. And so here we are, all questions and no answers, none that our so-called leaders will provide us with anyway. This monologue will be banned by certain online platforms for daring to ask those questions. Fortunately, there are still a few places online where we can talk to each other and ask each other questions, in the company there of thousands upon thousands of serious medics and scientists who are asking the same questions. Here's the thing, our leaders can run, but they can't hide. All of that's my opinion, of course, and you're free to disagree. Keep your tweets and emails coming through the show. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk and you can tweet me as well at GBNews. I'll try to get some of your comments later in the show. After the break, I'll be joined by an NHS GP who's in favour of the vaccine programme. First of all, Kerry, what do you think?
Well, I thought your monologue was really interesting, as usual, and I think it's great, Neil, that you ask the questions other people won't ask, and I am really concerned about the level of censorship, of cover-ups and all of those things, but I have a but. And I just can't see... I mean, I don't know whether you historically have always thought there might be a problem with medical products, you know, whether you're a sort of organic...
No.
Whatever.
No, I've had everything going up until a couple of years ago.
Because I'm very pro, you know, drugs for everything myself, rather than trying to fight it out. But, so I think my but is, I don't see that there's a drive by big pharma or political leaders to kill us off. So I think we have to ask questions about the mRNA and about these excess deaths. But I would think there's quite a spectrum of contributory factors and not just the vaccine. I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't question the vaccine, we should, but I just don't see that they're, you know, why do they want to, you know, not answer these questions? They don't want to kill us, surely.
I'll leave that hanging in the air. Daniel, I'm being pushed for time by the voice in my ear, so I'll come to you for comment after the break. I'll see you in 3 minutes.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you.
GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Hello again and welcome back to Neil Oliver Live. Before the break, I gave my views on the sharp rise in excess deaths in recent times. I'm joined now by Dr. David Lloyd, who is an NHS GP. David, good evening. Thank you for joining me. Why aren't we paying the same attention to the excess deaths as we did to COVID deaths?
Well, I think we are. I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. We've long been aware that the crisis that we've had over the last 2 or 3 years is increasing excess deaths, and it's very, very important that we do understand why. COVID obviously is the number one cause for lots and lots of those deaths, but people dying in A&E departments because they can't get seen in a timely manner is another one. And as we all get older and we are subjected to multiple infections, it's quite likely that there are excess deaths as well as there. So yes, it's an incredibly complicated problem, but we're not ignoring it. We're looking very hard to find the causes and do something about it.
It's not though being broadcast in the same way. You know, during the COVID deaths, there was a counter in the corner of the screen, sometimes literally, giving updated numbers, and yet more people are dying now of causes unrelated to COVID, and asking questions about it is all but forbidden. What do you make of the fact that when it comes to the excess deaths, you mentioned, people in hospital, a third of the excess deaths are people at home, people of all ages, and at home because presumably they weren't under the care of a physician specifically for anything that they knew to be wrong with them, and they're being found dead in their homes. Now, is that not the kind of thing that ought to be being shouted from every front page and every news bulletin as we attempt to get to the bottom of why these people are dying when they shouldn't be?
Well, the headlines last week that 500 people are dying a week when they shouldn't have done in A&E departments was very much front page of the news. I think we are trying to make the point that healthcare is incredibly important. It shouldn't be something that we should underfund or privatize, that we should be providing enough care so that people don't feel frightened about coming to see the doctor and know when the early signs of things like cancer are starting to show. So I think there has been an awful lot of things that have happened during this COVID epidemic that have made things change as far as people consulting their doctor is concerned. At the moment, it's impossible to get an appointment to see a GP. It's impossible to get seen in a timely manner in the A&E department. You have to wait a very long time for routine surgery. All of those things are going to contribute to people dying earlier than they should.
As many as a third of the people dying, though, weren't trying to get a GP appointment, weren't in hospital, didn't know they were ill, and those people are being found dead. for causes, we're not having that. But to move on a bit.
Can I push back on that? I'm not aware that people are dying because of some unknown thing in their houses when they haven't.
I don't think they're dying of some unknown thing either.
What do you think they're dying of?
Well, I think the questions have to be asked about the safety of the vaccines. I believe that a proportion of those deaths are being caused directly by the vaccines.
Sorry, I didn't realise you were linking the two together. Well, I think you're completely wrong there. The mRNA vaccines are phenomenally safe and have the most fantastic potential. Look at the two headlines that have happened this week, showing that long COVID is a much less of a problem in vaccinated individuals. And that was done on 2 million people in Israel, so an enormous study. And then the other one, which is that the NHS have just gone into partnership with the maker of mRNA vaccines to work with individualized cancer vaccines for people who've got advanced cancer. And there's huge data showing that we can reverse some of the really awful cancers that we're not very good at by producing individualized vaccines against the cancer mutants.
I would question absolutely whether it's good news that the government and their allies are moving forward with mRNA vaccines when it's demonstrably the case that the vaccines that we have at the moment that are being applied in the case of COVID are unquestionably causing harms and deaths. Reanalysis of Pfizer's
the health benefit ratio of using vaccines in COVID is overwhelming.
No, that is not correct. That is not correct. The data no longer supports that assertion. The reanalysis of Pfizer's own data showed that
the latest data supports it. We know the vaccine has a direct effect on the virus, and it also has a direct effect on the troublesome long COVID that we were all very worried about afterwards.
Doctor, reanalysis of Pfizer's own data.
The long-term effects of COVID.
Reanalysis of Pfizer's own data shows that 1 in 800 people suffered an adverse effect, which in summary means that people were more likely to be harmed by an adverse effect than they were to be hospitalised with COVID. Now, in the context of that reanalysis of Pfizer's own data, I fail to understand how you can continue to assert that those products are safe and or effective when they are unquestionably associated with people's deaths. Are you still recommending that people get the COVID
You're
vaccine?
saying something that really is open to question. We have enormous amounts of data that show these vaccines are very, very safe and have prevented millions of people of dying from COVID.
There is no question that people are dying or being harmed in the aftermath of receiving those injections.
Would you like to point me towards the data for that? That doesn't appear in peer-reviewed journals. I'm holding up today's British Medical Journal, which is actually the one that talks about long COVID. We have very good evidence that these vaccines work and are not dangerous.
How can it be legitimate to describe them as effective and that people were being given enough information to give informed consent when one of Pfizer's own people, in testimony to the European Union, said that they hadn't even been asked whether or not to test whether or not their products would stop transmission person to person of the vaccine. And yet we all listened for weeks and months and years to everyone from prime ministers to presidents down saying that if you took one of these medical products, you would not contract nor transmit the virus. Now, COVID, in the case of Pfizer, they hadn't even been asked to check if their product did that. Now, in what sense are people giving informed consent when those are the facts? That they're being told they can take it stop transmission, and Pfizer weren't even asked to test
the
that.
effectiveness of the Pfizer vaccine against COVID. It was published in the Lancet now 2 years ago. It's the best research there's been in a very long time. I think people worry because the vaccine seemed to have been researched very quickly and rushed out onto the market. And everybody says, oh my goodness, this is an untried vaccine. But really, the number of people that were involved in getting these vaccines into people's arms was enormous. And so really, it isn't a good argument that it was done too quickly or too rushed. These vaccines are fantastically safe and have saved millions of lives.
That's the line we keep being told. I do not
It's
believe
a line
the data.
that is
the
true.
Data no longer,
there is
data
an
no longer supports
alternative reality that says these vaccines are injecting I don't know, microchips into your arm or are selecting out different races. These are things that are perpetuated on the internet and are wrong. These vaccines are safe and save lives.
People are dying in the aftermath of them. They don't stop you contracting the disease or transmitting it or becoming sick or going into hospital or dying in hospital.
There are lots of different reasons why people are dying at the moment.
There are indeed, and we need to ask questions. David Lloyd, NHS GP, thank you very much for your time this evening. After the break, I'll be joined by consultant cardiologist Dr. Aseem Malhotra. I'll be back in 3 minutes. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have the break at the moment. I'm going to go to the panel. Lord Moylan.
Scientist or a statistician, so I'm not going to comment on the question whether the vaccines are, how dangerous they are and so on. But I do have a lot of sympathy with you when you say that it's difficult to raise these issues and not get dumped on, and in a very serious and often in a way that tries to cancel you out. And I think it should be possible to have a more open discussion about the concerns people have, because actually, as we know, if you don't discuss them, people who are concerned just get more and more worried, and conspiracy theories spread. I personally think that what drives this is that the close down of the economy, the lockdown of the economy, turned out to be economically totally disastrous. I mean, everyone knew it was going to cost a lot of money to do it. But it turned out to be much more economically expensive because it was very hard to get out of it. And the vaccines have been seen by governments as a means of getting us out of the lockdowns and moving the economy back towards something like normal. So they are very, very invested. They are very, very invested in getting those vaccines rolled out. So people who criticise them or raise questions, I think, cause nervousness on the part of governments and authorities. And I think that's really what's driving it.
Well, I think nervousness in the face of people dying and being hurt isn't good enough. That break that I prematurely tried to go to is upon us now, after which cardiologist Dr. Aseem Malhotra will be here. Back in 2.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back once again to Neil Oliver Live. Now, my monologue addressed the subject of excess deaths and the products marketed around the world as vaccines. No one is closer to the fire of all that than my next guest, consultant cardiologist Aseem Malhotra. Aseem lost his dad recently and has written about how he believes the jabs his dad took likely contributed to his death. for saying so and for calling on the suspension of the rollout of those products. Asim has put himself squarely in the crosshairs of those determined to keep pushing the needle. Thanks for being here, Asim. How do we explain these crazy times?
Yeah, I think crazy is probably the best way to describe it. But we can actually, explain it in a very rational way, Neil. So let's just talk about the evolution of my thinking and understanding and analysis of the whole vaccine issue. So I've said this before, but I think it's important to go over it again. So I was one of the first to have 2 doses of Pfizer vaccine. I was on Good Morning Britain, helping to tackle vaccine hesitancy amongst ethnic minority groups in February 2021 because I convinced a friend of mine, a film director called Gurinder Cheddar, to have the vaccine. And my thinking at the time, so it's very important to understand this because I think where I was then is where many people still are now, okay? As a doctor, vaccines are kind of the holy grail in medicine. There's a big problem generally with over-medicated population. I've been a big campaigner exposing that and working with the British Medical Journal and even, the Medical Royal Colleges where I work with them as well, to launch a campaign in 2015 called Too Much Medicine because, just to give you some headline figures, and we'll come on to the vaccine in a minute, it's estimated, by one of the most credible researchers in the world, Peter Gosha, that prescribed medications are the 3rd most common cause of death after heart disease and cancer, because of side effects. And when one looks at the root causes of that, a lot of it is because the clinical information that doctors get when they're making decisions for patients comes from drug industry-sponsored trials and vested interests where, because they are profit-making machines, they exaggerate the benefits and safety of their drugs. However, even though I've been one of the biggest critics and trying to highlight these issues and solutions for it, I never could conceive of the possibility that a vaccine could do harm. Because in the medical world and for many people, if there was addiction, if you put, safe and effective is almost synonymous with vaccines, despite all of that. So and I was on Good Morning Britain, and I said, listen, I understand there are rational concerns for vaccine hesitancy. Look at the history of what pharma have done. But despite that, compared to all the other drugs we give out to people, vaccines are the safest.
But they had to change. The definition of vaccine was altered to get these products under the wire, which is why I refuse to call them vaccines, because I don't think they are that at all.
Yeah, that's a controversy. No, I know.
So they came in under the cover of the safety and efficacy that was the heritage of traditional vaccination.
And I'm a cardiologist, right? And I would never. And I've had so many vaccines, and that's part of my job, and it's to protect patients. And we talk about vaccines. If you look at, for example, the chickenpox vaccine, you vaccinate, 100 kids, 95 of them will not get the infection. We were sold on this idea at the very beginning through press releases and from Pfizer, etc., that there was 95% effectiveness of the vaccine. And actually, ultimately, when we go back and look at that data properly, we find, and this is something that's been published in peer-reviewed journals now, that the absolute benefit from the very beginning from those trials, if we trust them completely, was about 0.84%. It was what we call a 95% less likely in the randomized control trials to get infection. But that meant you ultimately had to vaccinate 119 people to prevent one getting infected with the original Wuhan strain. So at that time, we obviously didn't know how things were going to evolve at the beginning. My thinking, and I kind of knew that, was, OK, you've got something that prevents infection in 1 in 119, but I didn't expect there to be any harm. And if you think about giving millions of people that vaccine, you are ultimately it wasn't going to prevent transmission directly, ultimately it didn't, but indirectly, as you prevent one infection in 119, ultimately you will reduce transmission without any concerns of any harms, right? And if you think about that, going back, Neil, if that still was the case, fine, it wouldn't have been as effective as we thought it would have been, but it wouldn't have caused harm and probably would have done some good. So let's just start from where we are there. Then things evolved, and, for me, the first thing that happened was my dad suffered a sudden cardiac arrest at home in July 2021. Very fit man, 73-year-old. In his community, everyone thought of him as one of the fittest guys. I was shocked. I knew his cardiac history inside out. I knew his lifestyle. I am a cardiologist, even prior to all of this, that has a reputation and expertise in understanding exactly how heart disease develops, the lifestyle factors. And his post-mortem findings didn't make sense. He had very severe coronary artery disease, which is odd because scans a few years earlier hadn't, explained, were fine. So I thought, hold on, he's had rapid progression of heart disease. I don't get this. What's happened here? Is it stress? I don't know. A few months later, the Times contacted me in October 2021. This is really interesting. And they said to me, the journalist said to me, she said, Dr. Malhotra, you're an expert in this area. We've got these unexplained increases of heart attacks in Scotland. I think she said something like 25% increase. What do you think is causing it? Now, at that point, I said, I'd predicted to some degree that lockdowns and the effects of lockdowns would have an effect further on. I almost predicted, because we know historically, Neil, where there's been huge psychological stress on populations from wars, even for years after the wars ended, there are increased heart attacks and strokes. Okay, there's a slight increase. And I said to the Times journalist, I said, actually, to be honest, we know people's diets unfortunately got worse during lockdown. People are severely stressed. And I would expect those to be the reasons. Now, interestingly, the journalist asked me at the time, what about the vaccines, Dr. Malhotra? And I said, listen, I think it's highly unlikely.
Still at that point,
I said, as a good scientist, it would be very naive of me to completely discount any possibility here, because we're not sure exactly what's happening. But I said it's very unlikely. And she quoted me in the article. There's a big time. The headline was "Poor Diet and Stress Linked to Increased Heart Attacks," according to leading cardiologists, right? That was my opinion at the time. But information changes, Neil. And, this is several months on from my dad's death. So, I was in dinner. A few people had, people at the time I thought were trolls on Twitter said, vaccine, vaccine, when my dad suffered cardiac arrest. I was actually angry at the time. I thought, what is this nonsense? How is that even possible? I blocked people who were suggesting it was a vaccine. So I just want to understand the emotion here, because I think the emotion I had then can explain some of the emotion people have now. Then the information changed, and then several bits of data came, and I won't go bore you with all the details, but I'll get to the crux of it in a minute, which suggested that the mRNA vaccines accelerate heart disease, they cause myocarditis. And then I started looking at the data, and I looked at what was going on nationally. We had an increase in cardiac arrest significantly, 2021 versus 2020. What data was being published but not publicised in credible journals by credible scientists who are not linked to the industry. I've been involved in this space for such a long time. I was the first guy in this country to highlight the harms of excess sugar. When I came out saying sugar was a problem, I got attacked from everybody, saying this guy's a nut, I won't name these organisations, so-called credible organisations, no, sugar's fine, all that kind of stuff. And it took time, and I published in medical journals, and eventually things changed. So I've been here before, Neil. When I looked at the data on the vaccine, and this is where we are now, and we're talking about excess deaths, we have the most overwhelming evidence you can have to talk about the link between the vaccine, mRNA vaccines, and cardiac problems, right? So what bits of data we have? You mentioned the randomized controlled trial data. A reanalysis of the highest quality level of data. So you've got lots of different studies. Some have higher impact and more importance and credibility than others. And at the top of that impact factor in terms of the credibility of study is the randomized controlled trial. Double-blinded randomized controlled trial. Pfizer and Moderna's own trials, reanalyzed by independent, very credible researchers, published in the journal Vaccine, but it should have been headline news, let's be honest with you. I'll be honest with you, it should have been, it wasn't, right? But I found it, and it was peer-reviewed in the journal Vaccine, and they found from the reanalysis the risk of serious adverse events, hospitalization, disability, life-changing event in the original trials that was approved by the regulator showed you were more likely to get a serious adverse event from the vaccine than to be hospitalized with COVID, which you mentioned already. That's a smoking gun on its own. OK, but let's not just rely on that data. You talk about replication. The lead researcher in that trial, research, Joseph Freeman, he actually recently came out, as you know, about a week ago and said, listen, I did this study. This is what I found. We've now got conclusive evidence linking the vaccine and sudden cardiac death, because very recently, autopsy studies published in a peer-reviewed journal found that a significant number of people who died within a month of having the vaccine, who suffered sudden cardiac death through autopsies, through special staining techniques, they were able to clearly say the vaccine, mRNA vaccine, was caused. So that's irrefutable. Now, the question is, what's the rate of that now? How common is it? And that original randomized control trial data is a smoking gun. It's actually at least 1 in 800 at 2 months. So am I saying that all of the excess deaths that we're seeing in terms of coronary artery disease, 30,000 according to the British Heart Foundation, who also said it's no longer to do with COVID, right? The College of Emergency Medicine said maybe 3,000 to 5,000 because of ambulance delays. So it's got a huge 20-odd thousand so-called unexplained. Now, of course, some of it's going to be stress, some of it's going to be lockdown, but these are speculative to some degree and likely. But the only information we have that's clear from randomized controlled trial data evidence, pharmacovigilance data, autopsy data, high-quality observational studies. Let me just give you an example here. When I published analyses on sugar and its relation to harms to the heart, which ultimately got accepted, and led to changes in policy. I met Jeremy Hunt. I was invited to 10 Downing Street twice because of my work on obesity and on sugar. The analyses that I did linking sugar and its harm to the body is inferior, Neil, to the analysis that we have on the link of the COVID mRNA vaccines and cardiac risk. Think about that.
Yes.
Right? So how do we explain the craziness? Well, let's just go back. Let's look at the root cause of the issue. Prior to the COVID pandemic, population health in this country has been pretty dire for a long time. We've had stalling in life expectancy since 2010. We have more and more people living with chronic disease. So what does that mean? Overall, our healthcare system, with all the different components, is causing a regression in the population health in this country for the last 10 years. Regression. We're going backwards. What are the root causes? They're multifactorial, but two of the big root causes are, this is probably a topic for another time, is ultra-processed food and unhealthy...
We should to wrap up because we're going to run out of time. So,
OK, fine,
yeah.
fine. So what I would say is we are dealing with the root cause of this problem. There's a corporate capture of public health. We have these very powerful entities that are there to make profit, and I'm talking about Big Pharma here, that exert influence over politicians, over the knowledge environment, over the mainstream media, over medical journals, over the regulator that gets most of its funding, which I didn't know initially. The chair of the BMA didn't know this in a conversation I had with him. 86% of the funding of the regulator in this country comes from pharma. People are well-intentioned. There are huge conflicts of interest. There's willful blindness. People are burying their heads in the sand. This vaccine, very clearly, from the evidence that I've analysed, needs to be suspended or paused until this is fully investigated.
Dr. Asim Malhotra, your testimony is so persuasive, and do please keep doing what you're doing. You often seem like a lone voice, but I know you're not because I'm plugged into so many other people who are saying similar, but keep doing what you're doing, and please come back soon and update us on this campaign.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you so much. After the break, I'll discuss the government's decision not to bring in a new law that makes spiking someone's drink a specific offence. I'll be back in 2 minutes.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Neil Oliver Live. As far as I'm concerned, anyone spiking another's drink with drugs with the intention of abusing or exploiting them should be locked up and the key thrown away. Last week, the crime of spiking was described as sickening, and the courts were asked to hand down lengthy prison sentences to those convicted. The whole phenomenon of spiking has exploded in recent months and years, and among those campaigning for greater awareness and tougher sentences for perpetrators is my next guest, Dawn Deans, CEO and founder of Stamp Out Spiking. Good evening, Dawn. Thank you for joining me.
Good evening, Neil. Thank you for inviting me on.
Now, Dawn, I'm a dad. I've got a daughter and 2 sons, and the thought of drinks being spiked makes my blood run cold. How common is it?
Well, you know, historically, this crime has been going on forever. I've been campaigning for the last 20 years actively, trying to bang on the door of the authorities to tell them the extent of this disgusting crime. And this is where it's all going wrong. This is the whole grey area, is that the way that things are now, you know, the Home Office Minister, Sarah Dines, has said we already have laws that deal with that. But actually, it's virtually impossible to find out the extent, well, the true extent of this disgusting crime.
Are police paying attention to the crime? You know, are the police aware, and are they taking action to, you know, to make people more, you know, suspicious about what might be happening?
Well, I think they are, of course, but, you know, it's a bit of a thankless task, to be honest with you, unless we get the education embedded into everyone who's working in the nighttime economy. Then we're fighting a losing battle. We need key funding to be put into place so that venue owners, security staff, taxi drivers, those brilliant street pastors that are out looking after us all when we're out partying, they all need to know the signs, the symptoms. There's so much that needs to be done, and it needs to start with this law being changed, or amended.
Kerry, listening to that, as you know, the idea that threat is out there for for anyone, but let's say for our young people especially, how, you know, what do you think should be the official response?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, first of all, I'm sure Dawn's right, and she's been campaigning for all these years, that there is a problem that there is a minority of, you know, lunatic criminals out to cause great harm, and it's mostly women whose drinks get spiked. But in general, I think we should be careful, not to sow fear. I mean, the nighttime economy has had enough problems as it is. Our right to party, young people's best years of their lives ruined because of lockdowns and vaccine passport hysteria. So I think the last thing we need is another panic of people not going out drinking and having fun. But can I just say, where there is a problem, I don't think greater legislation is always an answer. I think litigiousness often, you know, is self-defeating.
Dawn, it's a fair point that, you know, that young people have had a rotten few years, without a shadow of a doubt, and the nighttime industry, the hospitality industry in general, has been battered. We have to be careful, don't we, that we don't, you know, put another nail in the coffin by encouraging young people not to go where their drinks might be spiked.
I totally agree. And do you know what? I can't stand it when I go and speak to young people and they say, we're not going out anymore. But let's not forget, let's go back and look at all this evidence that we have. This has been going on for years. And the only time anybody stood up and listened was when last year, when the girls' night in happened. And do you know what? When millions was lost through the economy, then everyone suddenly sat up and started to listen, because this has been going on our streets for decades. It's something that is not educated on. And by not having a clear guidance to the general public, like what was just mentioned there is about people spiking people's drinks, but also alcohol is a drug. It's a socially acceptable drug. And I know people who thought they were being kind by sticking a double in somebody's drink. Sticking extra alcohol in someone's drink is also a form of spiking. It's also something that needs to be legislated on. And what we have now is people saying, oh, okay, you know, sticking something into someone's drink, if it's not done with malicious intent, oh, it was just a prank. That person could be on medication. They could have to drive, operate machinery. It really needs clear guidance.
Daniel, what's the solution? Is it more legislation, or how else do we tackle something so pernicious?
Well, I think the point about education is very important, because you said we shouldn't discourage kids from going to places where their drinks might be spiked. Well, maybe we should. Maybe we should be encouraging them to go to places that are properly managed and set up in such a way that we'll be able to say they're not going to be spiked and that there is a proper education campaign.
How does everyone protect the drink from a nefarious presence that wants to slip something into it?
Well, you know, it's all a question about what's acceptable, isn't it? And that's part of the education thing. This idea, oh, it's a jape, it's fun, it's a joke, I can do all that. That needs to be educated out of people. I agree with Kerry. I think inventing a new law specifically for it won't make very much difference at all. I think the idea that we have, that we should be constantly increasing prison sentences to express disapproval is turning into a nightmare that we're going to have to confront at some stage, because that's not producing any solutions, not just on this issue, but on others. So I think you're absolutely right. It's wrong, it's disgusting, it's a horrible thing to do. But I think inventing a new law is just not going to make a difference.
Don, what practical things can people do? What, you know, youngsters that are out, maybe particularly young women, what should they be looking out for, being aware of, in order to keep each other and themselves safe?
Well, there's quite a few things, obviously, that people can do to safeguard themselves. But first of all, just going back to that point a moment ago, we're saying that spiking shouldn't be a new law. That's not actually what we're asking for right now. What we're asking for is an amendment to the current laws so that they can then look at... So if we were to go out tonight and someone said, oh, I spiked Dawn just for a joke, and I was thrown outside of a nightclub, I'm left in a vulnerable position where someone else could come and pick me up, take me home and do whatever they wanted. That's the sort of thing that we need to show clear guidelines on. What can people do to safeguard themselves? We've got lots of different things on the market. There's spikies to go in a bottle or a stop top or a nightcap just to cover your drink, to stop an opportunist. And, you know, let's all start looking out for each other. I don't know why everyone's suddenly got so selfish. It's like, and I totally agree that the nighttime economy has suffered, but this is why we need key funding to be able to go in, because these crimes have been happening for decades now. And it's about time we stepped up to protect the young people that are going out on our streets every weekend.
Don Dines, CEO of Stamp on Spiking, thank you so much for putting a spotlight on a very serious issue. Thank you. Time for a break now, but between now and 8 o'clock, I'll meet the smallest ever woman to reach the final of Miss England. We'll cross the United States to discuss the miracle birth of 2 elephant twins, and we'll talk about the seal that is presently annoying anglers by eating thousands of pounds worth of fish in an Essex reservoir. I will be back in a few minutes.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Neil Oliver Live on GB News TV and on radio. In the next hour, I'll talk to the woman who is trying to strike a blow for short women in the final of Miss England. There's the story of the miracle elephant twins that have been born in the United States, and find out about the seal that's driving fishermen mad in Essex after eating thousands of pounds worth of their fish. That's all after the news headlines, brought to you this evening by Bethany Elsey.
Neil, thank you. I am Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB newsroom. 3 women and a 7-year-old girl have been injured in a suspected drive-by shooting outside a funeral in North London. The women, aged 41, 48 and 54, are being treated in hospital. The 48-year-old has suffered potentially life-changing injuries. The girl has also been taken to hospital, but her condition is currently unknown. Police say no arrests have yet been made. The UK has sanctioned Iran's Prosecutor General following the execution of a British-Iranian national accused of spying. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak described the killing of Ali Reza Akbari as callous and cowardly. Iran's state media is reporting the British ambassador has been summoned to Iran's foreign ministry, which is accusing Britain of meddling in their national security. But Foreign Secretary James Cleverly says the government will temporarily withdraw its ambassador from Iran and that they're considering further action against Tehran.
When I found out earlier this morning from the officials in Tehran that this had taken place, of course I was filled with a revulsion that I think any reasonable person would have. That is why we have taken this decisive action. That is why we've made it clear that our response will not necessarily be limited to the measures that we have announced today. We take this incredibly seriously.
US President Joe Biden's legal team say they've found an additional 5 pages of documents marked as classified at his home in Delaware. Earlier this week, his team admitted they found other classified documents at his home and in his garage from his time as vice president during the Obama administration. The US Attorney General has appointed a special counsel to investigate the matter. At least 5 people have been killed after a Russian missile strike hit an apartment building in central Ukraine. Dnipro's regional governor says at least 27 people, including 6 children, were injured in the attack, with more people still trapped under the rubble. Moscow's missiles also hit vital energy facilities across Ukraine today. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has pledged to supply British battle tanks to Ukraine to help the country retake territory lost to Russia. And nursing strikes have been paused in Scotland after talks between the First Minister and the Royal College of Nursing. Negotiations will now continue next week with the aim of reaching a deal by the end of February. The Scottish Government is also pledging to match any NHS pay increase in England if it's higher. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB Plus Radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Neil.
Thanks, Bethany. Now, beauty pageants are traditionally the territory of the tallest among the female population. My next guest tonight, Emily Harrison from Birmingham, successfully challenged that convention when she set out to prove that, in her own words, a girl should be 2 things: who and what she wants. Musician and student Emily, who stands 5 feet tall in her bare feet, reached the finals of the latest Miss England contest, becoming the smallest contestant ever to do so. Emily joins me now. Hello, Emily. Thank you for coming.
Hi, Neil.
How did you get on in the finals?
So the finals was really great. I did notice particularly that I'm the smallest contestant and the smallest contestant in the finals in the whole 94 5-year pageant history. So it was really good. I got on well.
How did you feel taking part in amongst, I'm presuming, people in the main who were significantly taller?
Well, it was definitely very different. Looking at the height difference, Miss England don't have any height restrictions, so I did feel that was good and I could represent for smaller people. It wasn't until I actually got to taking part in the semi-finals and the finals that I saw how small I was. But yeah, it did make me feel like I'm looking up to a lot of people, but I still feel that as a petite, small person, I've got a lot to give. And hopefully I showed that.
Well, the fact you mentioned that there is no height qualification or requirement to enter the competition clearly says that the organisers don't think height's got anything to do with the qualities that they're looking for anyway.
Yeah.
So it is up to you to sell what it is that you offer society.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I think I've looked into, quite a few that do have height restrictions. I mean, even like going into high-end fashion lines like Victoria's Secret, I think they have height restrictions. So to be able to sort of break the boundaries in that industry is something I'm hoping to do with ones that can't, that they really want restrictions there. So I'm hoping to change that and sort of pave the way for more petite models.
Do you feel that in life in general up to now, your height has affected your opportunities or the way people...
I don't think so, no. I think, well, we can face some discrimination, really. As smaller people, we might seem sort of more inferior, less powerful as a shorter person. I know that, like, in the modelling industry, the clothes look better on a taller person. I think that's, they like showcasing garments more on a taller person, but I think we can definitely show that too as petite people. It's sort of about our strengths, the confidence that we have and what we can bring to the table, knowing our strengths about the beauty of our own body, and as a petite person I think that I can represent that.
You've qualified, have you not, for a further competition specifically about being more petite than a tall person?
I have, yes. I've qualified for an international pageant, specifically for petite. This will be in Tampa in Florida. So I'm hoping to really represent and show that petite girls can do it too. So I know that there is like a gap that can be filled in the industry. I'm hoping to sort of represent for that market and show that we can do that.
And from the notes, I see that really, really your passion is music. Is that right?
Music is my passion. When I auditioned, I was asked what I could do to stand out, and that reignited my passion for music a lot because I went to music college a long time ago. So I went straight off school to music, but then I sort of went down the academic route. So this really reignited my passion. I was able to perform 3 times throughout. I performed at Sequin Walls with the judge Datza, who voted me in. That's a Gale. She's the owner of Sequin Walls.
Okay.
They perform backdrops. They make backdrops for Adele and ITV. They've made.
What kind of music is it that you perform?
So I'd say R&B, quite modern, hip hop style. I'm hoping to create my first album this year and release a bit of my music and show everyone.
And you busk, I think, is that right?
I do, yeah. I've been part-time busking. This started from Miss England. So I busked for charity. I raised £700 for the Miss England charity, Beauty with a Purpose, and also a stillborn charity because I had a sister that passed away as a stillborn. So I thought that was something that really resonated with me. And I was able to raise money for both of those and by busking in town, and it's something I've continued to do because I really enjoy it.
Kerry, sounds as if, beauty pageants have moved on somewhat from... I remember when they were much more prominent on television and the rest, but, encouraging people to bring forward other skills, raise money for charity.
Well, I just say congratulations and well done you, because, I made a film about women called Women a Success Story a few years ago, and I interviewed women who were doing the pageants.
Oh, okay.
They were doing on a boat. They were doing them on boats, in fact, up in Worcester.
Mine's going to be on a cruise ship as well.
Oh, yours is on a cruise ship as well.
Yes.
And I met the most fantastic women, and it was at a time when there was all this hysteria about women modelling.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And, there was attempts to stop women who were the racetrack girls, on Formula One, and a big panic about that. Rather than seeing women who model, like yourself, do it because they love it and they love the attention and they deserve it for looking great. And I think you get, double medals from me for doing it as a petite person.
Yeah, I definitely really want to represent that.
Daniel, what's height got to do with anything, I would say?
I don't think height has to do with anything at all. And I think Emily shows exactly that. She shows that you can win whatever your height is, and she, look at her here tonight, confident, gracious, beautiful, and a winner. Well done, Emily.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, and it will open doors, that's the thing.
Yeah, I'm hoping so.
I always think that about those competitions. For people that look down upon these kind of competitions, they absolutely give people opportunities to get. You're going to Florida.
Yeah.
You're going to spend time on a cruise ship. You're going to meet. Who knows who you're going to meet? Other people, in that industry, and it can be transformative. So did you have any? I don't know, hesitation about putting yourself forward? Had you ever contemplated doing anything like it?
I had. Well, before, I haven't done anything like this. I don't. I just sort of knew about Miss England for a while, but it was just sort of a random, I want to go for the experience, gain some confidence while I'm there as well, and also, because I'm so small, show that, that can be done. And I've seen, when I looked online for, small models, I was looking for what sort of short models are out there. I found, it was coming up with a lot of people that are still, 5'6", 5'7", and I thought I'll look a bit more, and I found Lily Depp, Johnny Depp's daughter. She's 5'2", she's quite close to myself in height, yeah, and she models for Chanel. So it's definitely possible to get opportunities, and I think it's just finding those and then breaking the industry market for where there are height restrictions.
What is next for you? What's your, what door do you hope will be opened by all of this?
I'm hoping that I can, after Florida, change the market standards and the ones that do have the height restrictions and really show that we can, we can do it. It doesn't matter about height. Height doesn't define us. It doesn't define our success. It's about what we bring and who we are as a people, our passion and our drive. So
it's fascinating, isn't it, Kerry, that in this day and age, we're still judging people. I mean, I'm so irritated by the return of judging people by the colour of their skin that has become so prominent. And the fact that we're still bothering about what, that someone's height should dictate whether or not they're beautiful or whether or not they should be part of any industry. It seems bizarre.
It is ludicrous. I actually think, Emily, you'll go a long way. And I think it is within the fashion industry, although there are other things that are funny about, I think being a policewoman, you have to be a certain height. And I think there are other industries where there are those kind of physical restrictions. And I think an aerospace, in the main, I think it's dying out. But we have seen a comeback of ridiculous ideas of skin colour, and difference that I think we should. But
the world's becoming such more diverse.
Exactly.
We definitely need to change the way for that.
Absolutely.
But I think it's also good that people like Emily stick to what she wants to do and has a go, because the vilification of modelling and the idea that women who do things and show off their body and their beauty are somehow objectifying women, I think is a very backward idea, rather than saying women can do whatever they want and go for it big time.
Yes, definitely. I completely agree.
Emily Harrison, please keep the torch burning for us when you go to Florida.
I will, definitely.
Miss England.
I'll be waving from Florida.
All the best of luck.
Well, good luck to you.
Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you so much.
Good luck.
We're going into a break, after which we'll find out about the historic birth of twin elephants at a zoo in the United States of America. See you in 3 minutes.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice, We are here for you on radio, television, and online. Across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello again, this is Neil Oliver live. The birth of healthy twin elephants in a New York zoo has been described as historic and a miracle. Keepers had been well aware that Mum Mali was pregnant, but the arrival of the second baby took everyone by surprise. Twins account for fewer than 1% of elephant births, and when they do occur, they rarely survive. The two new Asian elephants were born last year at the Rosamond Gifford Zoo in Syracuse, New York, and are doing well. Dr. Ted Fox, director of the Rosamond Gifford Zoo, joins me now. Hello, Ted. How are you?
I'm great, Neil. Thank you very much.
This, for me anyway, is a fantastic story. Talk me through what happened. You knew Mali was great with child.
Yes, she was. This is actually her fourth pregnancy. And so everything was going along, progressing very normally. The veterinary care staff and the elephant care staff were doing their normal drills to make sure we were all prepared for in the event of the birth. We did not know that there was a second calf until it was actually born. So that was a huge surprise. After the first calf was born at about 2 a.m., on October 24th, and we were very happy that it was a healthy 220-pound baby who got up within 15 minutes or so and started nursing, bonding with Molly. So we were all kind of relaxed a little bit. But and then we were waiting for the placenta to be passed because we're involved with research for stem cell research to come up with a herpes virus vaccine, which can be lethal to the elephants not only in human care but in the wild population. So we're very active in that research. We were waiting for the placenta to collect that to get it to the lab, and at about 11 o'clock the next morning. They were waiting. Were prepared to get it shipped right away, and it was a second calf. And they didn't know it was a second calf until it actually hit the ground. And he was a little bit weak. His respiratory rate was lower than normal. His heart rate was lower. So the veterinary care staff and animal care staff jumped into what they do best and helped him, supported him, got him breathing better. And it was a little longer, about a half hour before he was able to stand. But it's soon that happened. And people from around the country, or around the world actually, including at Whipsnade and Blackpool, we were interested to know what they thought would happen with that second calf. Internally and within the community in the United States, with the elephant care people, they thought there was a good chance that the second calf would maybe be rejected. because it was so long after, and elephants have evolved to have a single calf. But Molly proved us completely wrong, and it was equally as focused on taking care of that second calf as she was the first. And her grandmother Targa, who was also at the zoo, helped her do that. So it's an amazing, amazing thing to see these two little guys and how well they're doing and how well they're fitting into the whole social group now.
We're looking at these fantastic, fantastic pictures of these baby elephants. I don't know if this is a silly question, but given that it was twins, were the two, were they half the size at birth of a normal single elephant, or not?
That's typically what would happen, and that's probably a good reason why they don't usually survive. As I said, the first calf was born and he was 220 pounds, so he is a little smaller than we expected, given the size of Molly through her late pregnancy. But we weren't terribly alarmed because she looked good. She didn't look like she was carrying a second calf, and 220 is, although it's a little bit low, it's not half the size. Typically, they're in between 200 and 300 pounds. When they're born, a single calf, and the second calf was 237 pounds, so he was even bigger. So she had a lot of weight to carry through that pregnancy.
So two boys then, two males. Are elephants traditionally? I mean, are elephants good parents in the wild as well?
Very good parents. They're very focused on the protection in the calf right from the second they're born, like so many mammals. In the elephant society, it's not just the mother that ends up taking care of them and focusing on the calf, but certainly any of her extended family. In our case, she has a half sister, an aunt, and her mother, Molly's mother, Targa, all helped and were very, very interested in the birth. And I think they were all a bit confused from what we were observing. They weren't quite sure how to navigate those first few hours with two calves. One would lay down and be quiet, and then the other one would be rambunctious and calling out, and they just were, typically they would focus on the one laying down because it was at risk if there was a predator in the area, so they would want to focus on guarding that. But then there's a second calf that wasn't laying down, and it was very interesting to watch. We've had lots of behaviorists come to see the dynamics in this family group that is just remarkable.
Yeah. Daniel, elephants, I think we all hold elephants quite dear, don't we? There's something special, simply, about the look of them and the way that they behave around each other.
Yes, there is. No, and the family connections and the caring quality to them. And this is an amazing event, and it's so extremely rare. And for it to happen in a zoo, and probably in this case, for people who don't like zoos, it's probably a really good example of how being in a zoo gives these two calves the best chance of survival, actually, because they've got people there who can actually care for them and understand elephant health and so on. Whereas in the wild, maybe one of them could easily have died.
A hopeful story, Kerry. To see those images are fantastic, are they not?
Well, they are absolutely fantastic. I mean, cute as hell. What can you say?
You'd have to have a heart of stone.
Yeah, you'd have to have a heart of stone. And I do think Daniel's got a point about, because I find the anti-zoo stuff a bit over the top, but that's brilliant.
It is, isn't it? Ted, what is the plight of the Asian elephant globally?
Globally, it's like so many species that are endangered. The populations continue to dwindle, and that's why, to Daniel's point, the animals in human care in zoos and parks and so forth are so critical for us. They can't sample animals in the wild, on a daily basis, blood samples, or to check their levels of TB or EHV, the herpes virus. In a zoo setting, they can, and it's all through positive reinforcement and training. We're talking to the university at, I think it's Surrey, that is working on the vaccine, as well as one of the universities here in the United States. and hoping desperately that we can come up with a vaccine for that, because this is so critical. And otherwise, I think that population would continue to decline at an even greater rate. We're also involved with some really interesting research now. Mitigation between elephants and agriculture in their range countries is very important. Like so many wild animals that encroach when humans' populations start to grow, they get in, the elephants in Asia certainly love to get into the crops and eat them, and which affects, of course, the agricultural markets. And their bees, they found out honeybees are somewhat of an enemy to elephants, just like they are with humans. So now they're coming up with how closely you could put beehives around the agricultural fields, and which would prevent the elephants from coming in. So we're actually doing some of that research here and sending them all the data. And many zoos around the world are doing the same thing.
I remember being amazed when I learned that elephants, when they come across, in the wild, when they come across the bones of their fellows, dead elephants,
yes,
they know them for what they are, and they stop and they spend time and they touch the bones, and they make sounds that sound a little bit like, well, they certainly seem to be understanding that they're in the presence of fellow travellers. And that sense of community across the elephant world, I remember being profoundly touched by that. But Dr. Ted Fox, what a wonderful, upbeat, heartwarming and hopeful story. So thank you so much for bringing that to us and sharing with us those astonishing images of twin elephant miracle birth. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much as well.
After another break, I'll be joined by a positive psychology coach who wants to persuade more women that they can have it all. I'll be back in 3 minutes.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions, and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Neil Oliver Live. Tomorrow on GB News, we'll bring you an exclusive interview with Labour MP Kim Ledbetter. She's been speaking to Gloria De Piero about the murder of her sister, Jo Cox, how much more needs to be done to protect politicians, and why she will never hold open surgeries with voters.
I think grief's really funny, isn't it? Loss is very strange. Grief is very strange. And at the centre of any loss, it's a bit like an onion, isn't it? You've got losing that person, and then you've got the circumstances around that loss. And like I lost my grandparents at ripe old ages of 90s, and that was sad, but it wasn't tragic. And we were all upset, but we weren't devastated. You've then got losing people through illness. You've got losing people through, all sorts of different circumstances. I think murder just gives everything a whole new dimension.
You can watch that full interview with Kim Ledbetter tomorrow on Gloria Meets, where you'll find out who the person behind the politician is. That's every Sunday at 6 p.m. According to my next guest, women can have a career, bring up children and still take time out for themselves. Kelly Cookson is a marketing mentor and also a positive psychology coach, and teaches her clients that everything is possible with the right approach and mindset. Kelly joins me now. Good evening.
Hiya.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for fitting us into what must be a hectic schedule.
Just a bit.
Is it true? I've heard this claim before that women, in fact anyone, but women can have it all. Is it true?
I think if you want it all, you can have it all, and you have to decide what having it all actually means for you. Because for me, it's about spending time with my family and my daughter, as you mentioned, and also building a business that I love, that gives me time freedom to do the stuff that I want to do, which is kind of looking after my health, my wealth, spending time with my family, and yeah, just enjoying the finer things in life rather than just working all of the time. So I think you've got to figure out what that means to you.
Does the idea, though, sort of dangling that notion of having it all, does that not put pressure on someone who's either perhaps doesn't want to do that, or in any event finds trying to cover all the bases simply impossible?
Yes, so it is impossible, and the thing you need to do is visualise what it is that you actually want. So I think it took me having my daughter and realising that maybe I didn't want to climb the ladder as a marketing manager that I was at the time to become CMO somewhere with some big corporation. I actually did quite a lot of reflection really after having her and realising that I wanted to build something for myself that gave me that flexibility. So you need to get clear on what it is that you want to do for yourself and what that means for you and your family. But also, I am not perfect. I drop loads of balls all of the time. So I do not do everything. I think I've just made peace with the fact that I'm uncomfortable about my massive to-do list or all of the emails that I haven't answered or the things that I haven't done around the house. But ultimately, because I have that goal of building a business and a life that works for me and my family, I'm cool to let those balls drop. I'm just going to get the things done that I need to do.
Can you identify, though, with women who don't want, say, work outside of the house?
Yeah.
Women for whom the focus is their home, their family, their children, and and everything else that focusing upon a household and a family.
Yeah,
Can you identify with that mindset?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it comes back to that idea of what is it that gives you happiness? So you mentioned I'm a positive psychology coach. Well, part of that is working out where you can have a life that feels like a meaningful and good life for you. So absolutely, if you want to stay at home and be a stay-at-home mum or parent, and that gives you the joy and the positive emotions that you're looking for, absolutely brilliant. I think I've managed to strike the balance for myself in terms of having that time at home with my daughter, taking her out on day trips, and also building an exciting business that's fulfilling the career side of things. But absolutely, I've got friends that are stay-at-home mums.
I think self-employment is the key. Kerry, how's your balance? How's your work-life?
Oh, my work-life balance is terrible and fabulous at the same time. I've always done what I want to do. I mean, I've got a lot of time for what Kelly's saying, but I think, you know, society has changed. So thankfully, the pressure is no longer women to be the breeding machines and just the cook and the cleaner and the housekeeper and the carer, and women can therefore make those choices. And it's interesting that, as you say, there are women now who are just saying, yeah, well, hey, career and work is not for me. And that's great if you can afford it not to be. But I think the missing ingredient here is the fact that where's the cash going to come from? You know, for a lot of women, for a lot of families, women have to work, whether they'd like. It's not about an individual, you know, psychological journey or choice or reflection. I know you've done a lot of side hustles. I've read some of your stuff, Kelly, and it's great.
Side hustles?
No, she has, and she talks about side hustles. Where are you going to get the cash from to do that? And that's the reality. For me, at the moment, I've got to find other work, and I'll come here and do GB News or whatever, because I just cannot pay the bills at the moment. And that's a reality for women.
Daniel, these are tricky times for everyone, are they not? I think what the message that I'm taking from this is that people have to be absolutely flexible and look around at all the possibilities that there are for keeping a home together and for bringing in the money, as Kerry says. You've got to be ready to think about every opportunity possible, every option.
Well, I don't want to sound like I'm being difficult, but I do think Kelly is... I'm going to congratulate her on how she's managed her life, which is entirely her choice. But I do think it's a little bit dangerous to be suggesting to people that they can manage anything, everything, when manifestly most people, though they may be capable of doing it, don't actually succeed in doing that. And the danger isn't, Kerry, that all the women stay at home and just have children and do cooking, because that isn't what's happening. The danger is they spend all their time working. And we're seeing a replacement birth rate in this country, which has now fallen to 1.63%. People aren't having children. They're nowhere near enough to replace us. We're dying out at these rates. And I think that's because an awful lot of people are under this two-income per family pressure, which is very much a thing of the last 30 years. And it was always, women did always go out to work before that, but it wasn't all of them. They didn't feel they all had to go out to work in order to have the basics of life. And we've got that now, and I think it's the idea that you can make it all fine. It's not all fine. There are lots of problems.
What do you say, Kelly? What do you say to that?
We're not talking about.
So I would like to say that I started my business with no financial support whatsoever. In fact, I didn't have any savings, and I did have some debt because I went back to work part-time, like 3 days a week. So my salary prorated down wasn't a lot of money, right? So I started my business with a second-hand laptop that cost me 50 quid. In fact, I bought it from my previous employer. And there is so much opportunity for women to create a business online. So my business is all online. I've utilised the skills and the degree and all of the work experience that I've had up to this point to market and sell my services as a marketer for other entrepreneurs. And I work with a lot of other women-owned businesses primarily who are sitting there on their kitchen table while the kids are doing whatever, building an amazing online business, which is paying them more than they have ever been able to earn in their previous job, which is true for me. I'm making more money than I've ever made in my life. I'm proud to say that. And I've done it all off my own back. So it's true that I do have support at home. So my husband, he said to me, yeah, go for it. When I said, I think I'm going to leave my job and do this thing that's a bit of a side hustle full time. What do you think? But in terms of financial backing, I had nothing. I just went for it. I did take a leap, but that's my personality. And ultimately, I had in my mind that strong vision of I'm walking my daughter to and from school every day. And this career, this business that I'm building for myself, that's the facilitator to do that. So every day, that's what I think of. And that's what gets me feeling motivated and doing my thing.
Can I just say,
just quickly, Kerry, we're running.
No, I just think that it's a great... I think that's absolutely great, and a lot more women can do that kind of thing. I just slightly worry, Daniel, that you're crushing people's aspirations. You know, choice is something we want to promote, you know, not women... And women making those choices, and women are having babies later in life. And I don't think an underpopulation panic, any more than an overpopulation panic, helps anyone. And I think it's great that women can choose. I'm just saying we need to deal with the material circumstances that are deleterious to women choosing.
Yes. Kerry, I think choice. That's what it means. That's the important thing for me, is that as long as every individual person's choice, as it suits their existence, has to be paramount. Kelly Cookson, entrepreneur, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. After the break, I'll meet this week's Great Britons, 2 women who did a full Monty strip show, apparently. We'll find out. On their way to raising £50,000 for a cancer charity. See you in 3 minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hello again, welcome back. This is Neil Oliver Live. A wayward seal called Nelson is living the dream in an Essex fishing lake. He found his way into Rochford Reservoir at the end of last year, apparently, and since then he has helped himself to an estimated £3,000 worth of carp, catfish and bream. Furious fishermen find him to be no admirable Nelson. There are even concerns that if he's not caught and relocated soon, he may even eat so many fish he will make himself ill. Simon Dennis from the British Divers Marine Life Rescue joins me to discuss the prospects for a seal who surely thinks he's living his best life. This is great. I love this, Simon.
He's a very happy chap, certainly, where he is.
Where did he come from? How did he find his way into a reservoir?
Yeah, the whole network of that bit of Essex is little creeks and mud banks and rivulets. We had one a couple of years ago that ended up on the rugby club pitch in Southend, which is on the same brook. So they do come upstream. They're inquisitive. He's gone over the bank, the little weir that feeds the reservoir, and hey presto, he's sat in a supermarket with an all-you-can-eat buffet, really, as far as he's concerned.
And there's no issue with him being in fresh water. I mean, I know they don't. I know he's a mammal and he breathes air, but it's still, he's a marine creature.
It's not the best for their skin, and he's got a couple of injuries, which is one of the reasons we need to get hold of him. They don't, obviously, nothing heals as well in fresh water as it does in salt, and he should be in his colony with his other social, interactions going on.
There he is. So look, he's given himself a round of applause. Is he alone? Is there definitely only one seal?
We definitely hope so. Yeah, we think he went in probably middle or early December. And he'd been seen by some of the local boat owners in that area being more inquisitive than the others and coming up to the little creeks and things.
Now, is it a stocked reservoir? Is this somewhere that people
it is,
fish in?
Yeah, we're working very closely with Nick, who runs the reservoir. Obviously, it's his business, and at the moment it's closed by the council who own it. So, yeah, we need to get this resolved for his sake as well.
And is it actually possible that he could eat himself into an early...
I've never heard of that happening. Right. Like any animal, normally they'll regulate themselves. He's not eating as much as he would if he was at sea, because he's got no current to swim against. He's got no competition with other seals for fish. And he spends most of his time hauled out on the small island that's in the middle.
How might you go about catching him? I presume the long-term objective is to get him out of there and back into the sea.
Yeah, the long-term objective is get hold of him, get him into a local rehabilitation centre at South Essex Wildlife Hospital, who handle about 40 or 50 seals a year with us at BDMLR, and from then relocate him, probably on the south coast, not back in the Essex area. How we do that, we've had a couple of attempts with sort of nets on the lake. They're incredibly agile in water. An urban lake has things like, shopping trolleys or whatever at the bottom, so we can't get a close fit with the net to the bottom of the lake. He can swim over the top, and obviously as soon as we appear with a boat or anything like that, he looks across from his island and disappears. They can stay up underwater up to 20 minutes. So actually working out where he is at any time is a challenge. So we're talking to a couple of zoos and other experts around the rest of the world. BDMLR, as an organisation, has huge international links.
Kerry, this strikes me as almost the stuff of at least a children's illustrated book. Surely. Nelson wanted more.
I just think it's hilarious. And him being such a slippery mother, as you said, in terms of getting away. I thought you guys were all kind of good at catching these
Yeah, I mean, most of the ones we catch are on land, and I think you were talking to my colleague Dan last week about the walrus that we were involved in, and thank goodness we didn't have to try and catch something weighing 3/4 of a tonne.
With teeth with tusks like those?
Yeah, exactly. They're just incredibly agile in water. Most of the recoveries and rescues we do, they're on the beach, they've suffered dog bites or they've been ill through other means, and we can get to them and get between them and the water and therefore get hold of them safely. In water is to coin a phrase, a whole different kettle of fish. But it is amusing, but it's difficult for Nick and his business as well.
Daniel, I think there's something quintessentially British about it somehow, about these anglers and the
yeah, you could sort of see
fish stocks and
a 1950s sort of Pressburger type film. All of this, couldn't you? I want to know, why has the council shut it? I mean, that might be a stupid question, but why has the council shut down the fishing?
It's a relatively small lake, and I think they've taken the decision that for the welfare of the seal and while we sort ourselves out in what to do next, having anglers there's the risk, particularly if an angler catches a seal, the seal will then grab the fish as it's being wound in, hook itself in, and do itself quite a lot of damage that way. So there's a whole sort of little nest of reasons, really. But I like the idea of a film, maybe black and white with some mist rising off the water.
I think so, yeah.
Just to make matters even better for Nelson, the fishermen aren't even allowed to fish.
Yeah, there's no competition.
So he's absolutely got to place them.
He's got no competition at all, even from the fishermen.
Yeah, I mean, it's a catch and release lake anyway, so he might, think someone was helping him.
22. There's no way of slipping him, going back to our spiking drinks earlier.
Can't
no
spike
way
him.
of slipping
Spike
him
the
a
leg.
Mickey Finn in a
there's only a
tasty
couple of
morsel.
centres around the rest of the world who dart, for example, for sale. The issue is they'll go into dive reflex straight away.
Oh.
If he goes into the water, obviously it's not massively deep, but it's murky. We would have literally seconds to find him before he's shut down with an anaesthetic in.
He's got it sewn up. You can't touch him. People can't fish. You can't find him because he's got every aquatic advantage going.
he has. I mean, they're supremely agile in their environment.
It's a brilliant story. Simon Dennis, British Divers Marine Rescue. Thank you so much.
Pleasure, Neil. Good
Thank
to
you
talk
for bringing
to you.
that to us.
Thank you.
Amazing. Now, my Great Britons tonight lost their husbands to cancer, but responded to their own losses by raising a small fortune for a charity that supports cancer sufferers and their families. While still coping with their own heartbreak, Julie Cunningham and Linda Gordon, both from South Shields, have raised more than £50,000 for the Macmillan charity in honour of their late husbands, Paul and Tony. Now, I'm just being told that Linda and Julie their link has gone. No, I'm being told now that their link is back. Hello there, Linda and Julie. Now, I'm going to go straight... Thanks for joining me. I'm going to go straight in here and find out about this full Monty experience that you had. Do tell all.
Well, the original one we did in 2019, and it came about because Julie and I had both watched the programme with Ashley Banjo and I can't think of her name. Colleen Nolan.
Yeah.
Yes. And so anyway, cut long story short, I rang Julie and said, I've got an idea for our next charity night. And Julie said, I know what you're going to say. She said, it's the Monty, isn't it? And I said, yeah, what do you think? And she said, I think it's a really good idea. So we got some of our friends and family involved as well. And originally in 2019, there was 10 of us who did it. We also did it again just in November 22, just gone. But there was only about 7 of us did it that time. But yeah, it was quite an experience the first time because naturally we'd never done anything like that before, and we were all really nervous. But I have to say it was absolutely fantastic. The night was brilliant. The supporters were tremendous. They were really supportive, and the nerves kind of went when we got on stage.
Now, tell me though tell me about Tony and Paul, because I believe the 4 of you were all friends together. You had known each other for years. Tell me about them and your time together.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So my husband Paul, he was diagnosed in October 2015 with stage 4 esophageal cancer. But Tony and Paul were sort of, they knew each other first. And Julie worked in the pub where Paul and Tony used to drink, and we just sort of got to know each other after we both had our boys, because the boys, I've got twin boys, and Julie's got she's got 3 children, but her youngest son was born around the same time as my 2 boys, and we just got to know each other. So ever since then, from about 1995, we've been really, really close and good friends. We went on holiday together with the children and stuff like that. So, yeah, so we were really close.
Anniversaries were about the same.
Anniversaries were sort of within a couple of weeks of each other as well. So quite often we would go, away for the weekend or whatever to celebrate our anniversaries. So, yeah, we were really close.
Julie, tell me about what else, apart from the legendary Full Monty, what has been the nature of the fundraising that's enabled you to raise as much as £50,000?
That's been over a period of about 4 years that we've done bits and pieces there. We've done quite a lot of stuff actually. We've had a toddle, we've had a sponsored pub quiz where we've gone from pub to pub and guessed things about the pub. We've had the coffee morning, we've done tabletop.
With the photo that's up there was a friend of ours who was on that photo. It's one of Paul's best friends actually. In at the gym he was at, he ran like a gymathon. So people got sponsored to do rowing machines, treadmills, the cross trainer, that kind of thing. And that raised, I'm sure that raised about £500. That photo there's the first photo, so that's all the girls that were involved. Sorry, that's the second photo. The girls that were involved in the second Monty, and the lady on the end with the green jacket, that's Alicia, and she did all the choreography for us. She did take part in the first one, but she didn't take part in the second one. So yeah, that's all the girls who were involved, obviously including Julie and I.
I think it's just, this is a section, the Great Britain, it's just paying some attention to people who've been through something dreadful, and yet, despite that, turning it into something else, as well as going through your own grief and the rest, that you were inspired to do something for the wider community and for other people going through exactly the same thing as you. It's such a credit to you, and it's uplifting to hear about people like you doing these things.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, both Julie and I have both said, and a lot of people have given us, lovely feedback and support, but it's always been, what is the alternative? You can sort of go down into the depths of depression and things like that. But I think just through supporting each other, at first, Tony and Julie, because Tony was still alive when Paul died, and they supported me really, really. It was just tremendous. And then obviously when Tony was diagnosed, just before we set the group up, I was there for Julie because I understood everything she was going through. And Tony was absolutely fantastic in supporting me.
I'm just running out of time, but honestly, you're an inspiration. It's a wonderful story. Thank you so much for that. Linda and Julie, thank you.
Yeah,
that's all from me tonight.
Thank you.
That's all from me on Neil Oliver Live. Thanks as always to my panel, Daniel Moylan and Kerry Dingle. I'll be back at 6 o'clock next Saturday. Next up, it's Mark Dolan tonight. Mark, what have you got?
Neil, thanks for another brilliant show. In my big opinion monologue, I'm quite serious about this. It's an important issue. We've got to talk about people sending their dogs off to be walked in large groups. A woman killed, muzzled and mauled to death by 8 dogs. There needs to be a change in the law. But we kick off with the People's Hour. I'm taking your video calls. Should MPs have second jobs? Are they underpaid? And should we be tough on people that litter the streets? Lots to come. Here's the weather.
Hello there, I'm Craig Snell and here's your latest forecast from the Met Office. Well, as we look ahead to Sunday, it's going to be a brighter day for most of us, but it's certainly going to be feeling a good deal colder, with some of the showers actually turning to sleet and snow. So here's the situation out there at the moment for Saturday. Still got this area low pressure dominating the UK, but as that moves away, it will start to then allow us to drag in some colder air from the Arctic. So quite a blustery end to the night across most of the UK. We've got this area of rain and hail snow across Northern Ireland and Scotland, sinking its way into Northern England too as the night goes on. Further south across the rest of England and Wales, generally a mixture of clear spells and a scattering of showers. But with the colder air becoming established across Scotland, we could see some further snow showers and also some icy surfaces on any untreated roads. So going into Sunday, a cold day for all of us as this area of rain and hail snow continues to sink its way southwards, weakening as it does so. Behind it, plenty of sunshine for the Midlands, Northern England and Scotland, but further snow showers coming in across the far north of Scotland throughout the day. If you factor in the strength of the wind up here, it's going to be feeling fairly cold, highs only 2 to 4. Further south, generally around where we should be for the time of year. Going into the evening, we start to see this next area of rain moving in across the southwest. As it bumps into the colder air, we could see some sleet and snow across the Midlands and Wales. And then later on in the night, just keeping a very close eye on the southeast. If this moves a bit further northwards, we could just see a little bit of sleet across the high ground of the southeast come Monday morning. A cold start, though, for all of us, especially in Scotland. Again, risk of some ice on untreated surfaces. And then overall on Monday, we will see plenty of sunshine for Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, and eventually into the rest of England and Wales. But wrap up warmly, certainly will be cold out there with some sleet and snow showers around, especially in the north, and that continues on Tuesday and Wednesday.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me
Lawrence Fox on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.